I'm going live again. And today I've decided to talk about plant medicine, such as the newly colonized ayahuasca, mushrooms. Hello, Aspen. Hello, little puppy. And why I was curious about trying these things and how I use these things to help me with the symptoms of PTSD and ADHD. Two of my favorite acronyms. Um, so it's been a few years since I've done uh, ayahuasca, and I'm going to tell you the whole story. So if like you're like me and you're like someone else's drug trip is boring, this one's not for you. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. I will address them. One of the questions I got was like, "What's it like?" And I'll tell you. But let me start with how I even got the idea that maybe Mama Aya was something I should explore. I was living in LA. I matched with a guy on Tinder, and he was like, "I just got back from basically ayahuasca camp in Costa Rica." And it's this place called Rhythmia. And I never actually met that guy, but it planted this seed. It was, mama reaching out to me and being like, "I'm ready for you, babe." So I was then weeks later sitting in traffic in LA. I was contemplating quitting my master's program, which was the only reason I was in LA. And LA was very overstimulating, overwhelming for me. And I didn't really know where else to go. So I was like freaking out. I was about to have a panic attack in traffic. I just wanted to get home. And I pulled over and I called my bestie and I was like, "I think I need to go to Costa Rica to like figure my next steps out." And my bestie at the time was very intuitive and she was like, "I agree with you. I think you should go." And so I called the place right then and I said, "How much is it?" At that time, it was $6,000. This was a few years ago. It's much more expensive now. $6,000 specifically for a private room. I'm not sharing a room with someone. I don't do that. That's not something that I'm interested in, listening to someone else snore and fart in their sleep. Not for me. So I paid for a private room at this fancy resort and didn't really do much research besides that. I scheduled it for my birthday, which is December 29th, the worst birthday. And my dog ended up getting really sick and was like pooping blood for like 3 days straight. And I was so terrified I was going to have to put him down. And my mom was supposed to come down and dog sit him. And she was like, "Girl, I'm not cleaning up blood from your dog's butt for a week straight while you're gone. If you leave, I'm going to take him to the vet. I'm going to board him at the vet at the vet." And I'm like, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let my dog go to the vet where he might die from pooping blood. So I canceled the trip to Costa Rica and I didn't reschedule it. I was like, I don't know when I'm going to go again. 2 months later, I was in Mexico. I was at a very fancy resort through this resort pass that I had purchased where you got to stay at incredibly expensive places. And it was like maybe, 25% of how much it would cost if you just booked it directly. So I'm staying at this super fancy resort. I can't even remember the name of it. Started with an M. On the San Jose del Cabo side of Baja. And you should go to Mexico now. YouTube commenters are just the sweetest. Just the sweetest. Why are you saying that, Junior Third? Are you saying that because horrific things are happening in Mexico, one of my favorite countries in the world? Because the world war that's been happening for years has now hit Mexico? Is that why you're saying that? To be kind of a butthead? I'm not going to let people get away from being a butthead. Get out of here. Get out of here. I love Mexico. Viva la revolucion, okay? I'm sorry for Mexico for what's happening and for America's part of it. It's horrific. So flash forward, I'm in Mexico, giving Mexico my tourism dollars, and I am sitting on the beach having my business coaching meeting. My business coaching group is called The Art of Abundance. It's how I help people make just a shit ton of money doing healing work in the world. And so I'm teaching people, we're talking about meditation. I finish the meeting, I close it, I'm, looking out onto the ocean. And the guy sitting next to me says, "Excuse me, were you just talking about meditation?" And I said, "Yeah, I was." I told him a little bit about what I did, and he and his wife and I all struck up a conversation. And it turns out For some reason, they mentioned why they were there, which is that they weren't actually staying at that resort. They were staying at another resort and just happened to go to this resort because they'd heard something, really was a really beautiful resort, which it was. I wish I could remember the name of it so I could give them a plug. Um, and they said something about like, oh yeah, we're going to Costa Rica in June. We were just talking about our travels. And I was like, oh, I was supposed to go to Costa Rica in December, but I haven't rebooked the trip yet. And they were like, oh yeah, we're going to this place called Rhythmia. And I was like, what? That's where I was going to go. That's where my trip was. And I was like, I should, hey, you be nice to each other. You guys. Maggie was trying to get my attention, and Mr. Stanley was like, she's busy. She's busy, my girl. Thanks, Stanley, but you don't have to be a jerk about it. So I'm like, I should go with you guys. When are you going next? Thank you, Stanley. Here's Stanley. Stanley wants to be on camera. Hello, sweetheart. I know. You're the rule. You're the taskmaster. You make sure everyone's behaving. So I'm just going to ignore whatever comments are coming through. I just can't with you guys. You guys just feel like you get to be anonymous on here and you get to say whatever is in your heart. And I just don't give a shit, quite frankly. So you can respond to each other and I will just ignore you. I'm telling a story here. Maggie, I'm telling a story. Everyone's being an asshole to me right now. Everybody get away from me. Excuse me. So I end up booking the trip at the same time the wife is going. And come June, get on my flight, go to Costa Rica, show up. Again, haven't really done much research about what to expect, except I talked to a psychic friend of mine because I started having doubts of like, I'm going specifically because the complex PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, the symptoms are kind of ruining my life. And I want to know if maybe this is something that will help. And I want to know if this is something that I should recommend to other people as something that could help with something that's really complex and challenging to manage and that's dominating my life in a way that I don't appreciate. So I get to Costa Rica and I've been there many times before. I get off the plane and I'm sitting waiting for the bus to come and the other people who are on my bus come. We start talking. One person had been there before. Another person was a veteran who had obviously been through some really traumatic things. And then we get in the bus and we get to the facility and it's, very beautiful. Rhythmia is very beautiful. They've done a good job with the resort and it's, I know, Aspen, you guys just need so much attention today. And what I liked about this place is that they did a lot of education, workshopping, so that you had some information of what you were going to experience. The first thing I experienced was a breath work, which is, I'm from the yoga world, so I would call it pranayam, but they called it breath work. And the first night I was kind of like, I was doing the thing and I was kind of getting there and people around me were screaming and crying and laughing. And there were probably like 70 people in the room, like not an insignificant number of people. And one of the girls comes over to me, one of the people, the facilitators, and puts her hand on my heart and she said, let go. And all of a sudden I'm one of the one who's screaming and crying. And I felt this like explosion of emotion. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting. And the next morning we wake up and, the food is delicious. I'm vegan. They had tons of vegan food. I think pretty much everything was vegetarian or vegan. It was very easy for me to eat there. And just traveling as a vegan can be very challenging. And the next day is like the workshops. They're giving you some education about what to expect. And then it's 4 days of ceremony. And start when the sun go down. You have to talk to their doctors. It's a medical facility. So you have to talk to their doctors to make sure there's nothing serious going on with your body. There was one guy there who was in his 80s and he had a heart condition. And they said, listen, we cannot let you take the medicine. We have something else for you. He was kind of upset about that. And so the first night, I think I took three cups of medicine and it's, like 70 people in a room. Eventually people are throwing up, people are screaming, people are crying, people are shitting themselves. If it sounds like hell, it's because it kind of is. Now, one of the instructions that we had been told is as you go into ceremony, you may have the option to like follow a unicorn or to follow like your creepy uncle. And you should follow your creepy uncle because that's what you came here for. This experience is like 20 years of therapy in a week. Now, I've had 20 years of therapy. So, as I mentioned earlier, I had spoken to a psychic friend of mine of like, should I do this? And she was like, it's not going to help or hurt what you're going through. It might be kind of interesting. It's not going to make anything worse. So, that first night, even though I was told not to, I was like, Mama Aya, please be gentle with me. Please be gentle with me. I've been through enough. And so a lot of what I experienced, a lot of the release that I experienced was these huge yawns. Like it felt like my jaw was going to dislocate. And then I would see, because you're hallucinating, I would see a little black bubble of emotion come out of me. And I would kind of blow it off and watch it go into the universe and just become part of the sun. And it was all kind of very delightful. And eventually I kind of fell asleep. And then I heard in my head the voice, Mama Aya was like, you're ready to get rid of your shit? And I just started vomiting. I got up, I grabbed my bucket, and I am just throwing up the demons that have been living inside of me. So it was relatively mild compared to what a lot of people were going through. The hardest part for me was twofold. The mosquitoes were driving me fucking crazy. I have a sensory disorder. I'm autistic. And I was just being driven crazy by the mosquitoes and the heat and that sensory experience of just feeling sticky and itchy. And the other thing was after kind of the ceremony ended, it's 2, 3 in the morning, everyone sits around and kind of discusses their drug trip. And that just drove me crazy. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be in the shower. I wanted to be in my comfy luxury bed. And I just didn't want to be there. But they were very like somewhat strict of like, stay until the end. It's important that you stay in the Moloko until the end. So the first night I stayed until the end. You wake up the next day, you're kind of like, I'm so tired, so exhausted. There's another workshop, there's a yoga class. And then, you're just waiting the rest of the day for your ceremony. So the second night ceremony, I think I did 2 cups, and I was a little bit more in tune with what to expect. I didn't specifically ask the medicine to be very gentle with me. And I got up and was kind of wandering around, and I would pass somebody and see like their inner child next to them. Like I was hallucinating what other people were experiencing. And one of the things they said was like, if you came here as a healer, and I'm a healer, do not get involved with anyone else's trip. You're going to want to help people. It is not your responsibility. Stay in your own journey. So I would go outside. I would stare at the stars, and I started seeing the intricacies of the universe. I saw the fractals. Aspen, I'm just going to pick you up and hold you on my lap. Oh, here he comes. Here's a big boy. You're going to have to just stay right here so I can snuggle you the whole time. If you're just going to cry the whole time. If you're just going to cry, I'm just going to snuggle you the whole time, okay? Is that enough attention? So, two of these dogs are relatively recently rescued, and they're very anxious, and they need a lot, like constant regulation and touch. And I love it because I love dogs, but when I'm like trying to do something, buddy, it's not my fave. It's not my fave when you're demanding attention. So I go outside and I'm starting to see the intricacies of the universe, and I'm seeing like the fractal patterns of the simulation that we've created. And I started seeing spiders everywhere, and spiders I'm severely arachnophobic. If you go back and look at my other live videos, you'll see that I am severely arachnophobic. And one of the things they had said is like, the aliens may come and help you and give you surgery. And I remember falling asleep, and I remember hearing a knitting sound and seeing the spiders sewing my subarachnoid part of my brain. There's literally a part of your brain that's called the subarachnoid space, because it looks like a bunch of spider webs. I could feel them stitching together what had been severed from the severe trauma that I've experienced in my life. Kind of interesting hallucination. Since that was kind of my intention going in, was like, how can I help this? How can I use this to help my PTSD? So that was the second night, little alien surgery. The third night, and like by this time, like you're exhausted, right? You haven't been sleeping basically at all. The third night, I was like, I'm kind of over this. I kind of don't want to do this. So I only took 1 cup of medicine, and I went to the bathroom at one point, and there were 2 buckets in the bathroom. People were like carrying their throw up buckets around. And I went in there and I saw the 2 buckets, and I understood that they were there for me and that I needed to vomit into both of them. And all of a sudden, I just start vomiting into both of them. And I was vomiting up the 2 miscarriages that I had had, the ghost babies that had been living in my body. And Mama Aya was clearing them out, getting rid of them for me. And I came out of there and I didn't even realize that I had been holding on to that, because I'm someone who's never wanted children. Like, to me, it was actually like, great, I don't have to, there's nothing I have to do. This is taken care of for me. But it turns out those ghost babies were holding on to me, and Mama Aya cleared them out for me. So I come out of the bathroom and I'm really sad. And there's a dog there. There were 2 dogs that would kind of wander around. There's a dog there, and I just walk over to the dog and I just start petting the dog with the tears streaming down my face. And one of the facilitators comes over and sees me really upset. And she doesn't say anything. And she's dressed with like a head covering, and she looks like the Mother Mary. Like, that's the feel, the energy I had from her was the Mother Mary. And she sits in a chair right near me, and I can just feel her watching me and sending her energy to me. And finally, I go over to her and I just said, I need help. And she points over to the main facilitator, and I walk over to him, and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm just so sad. And he sits me down and he does his ceremonial stuff. He's like, throwing water on me. He's got his feathers and he's, clearing my energy. And all of a sudden, his face turns into a slot machine, and I just see the slot machine figures going, and then I see like jackpot, and I just get filled with this incredible joy that like I'd never experienced before, and I just start laughing hysterically in my drug induced stupor. And he had like taken my sadness away and replaced it with the utmost joy, and I was like, great. And I was like, well, got what I came for. And I was done with the mosquitoes, and I didn't want to stay for another 4 hours and listen to people talk about their drug trips. And so I snuck out, and I'm like army crawling on the grass to get back to my room. And I took a long shower and I put on Gilmore Girls and I fell asleep. And the people came like 4 hours later at like 4 a.m. and were like, are you okay? And I was like, yep, I'm fine. The 4th night, 'cause there are 4 nights of this, I was actually not allowed to go to the ceremony because I was bleeding out of my vagina. And they don't allow you, for this particular night, they did not allow you to take the medicine when you are bleeding out of your vagina. And I was kind of upset about that. Like, it seems kind of sexist. And I was also not really upset about that because, like, I didn't really want to do this anymore. I was kind of over it. So they had a separate ceremony for those of us who were on our cycles, on our moon cycle. And they explained the reason that you don't do Mama Aya when you're bleeding is because when your womb is open, you already have access to all of the psychic abilities, all of the intuition, all of the healing that you need. It's just that you've been so disconnected from your cycle, and in the patriarchy raised to believe that it's something painful and shameful and something you need to hide and pretend that it isn't happening and that it's disgusting. And indeed, it is your most powerful time. And this made me so happy. This totally changed things for me, where I was like, damn right, this is my most powerful time. Absolutely. I don't have to go be in a room where people are vomiting and shitting themselves. I can just be here bleeding into just celebrating my power as a woman. 100%. What a beautiful gift. What a beautiful gift. And I got to go to bed so early and slept so well. And it was just glorious. It was just glorious. And then we're there for 3 more days, and they're helping us kind of like integrate all the things that came up. And they're also, selling like, oh, you should schedule your next trip. And I'm like, no, I'm never coming back here. I think I had my experience. So that's what my experience with Mama Aya was like. The best part about it was the people that I met there. The last day, I woke up for the sunrise and I walked up to a labyrinth that they had, and I watched the sunrise with a bunch of other people and ended up sitting next to this woman, and we ended up being on the same van back to the airport. And we struck up a conversation, and I mentioned that I was a skier and had a few ski trips planned. And they were like, "Oh, we have a ski house. You should come stay with us. Come anytime." And I was like, "Don't say it if you don't mean it." And now they're some of my best friends. And I go to visit them all the time. And so that I think was the real value of that experience for me, because there are so many different ways. I still have symptoms of PTSD. I didn't fix all my problems, in one go. There were a few what they call miracles that happened during my time. There was a man who had cancer who said, after all the other doctors in the world said there's nothing we can do, and he did the medicine, and from what I heard, he didn't have cancer anymore. They scanned his body, and there was no more cancer. There was another man who had been a meth addict, and he had gone to Mama Aya to say, "Please remove this addiction from my experience." And by the end of the week, he was like, "I'm done. I'm just not an addict anymore." And last I heard, which was, not keeping in close contact with these people, but like that was enough for him. That's all he needed. No more drugs. So the question I'm asked a lot is, do you recommend this to people? And I'm like, no, I don't. I can't recommend this to people. You have to recommend it to yourself. If Mama Aya is calling to you, you got to heed that call. And you'll see it through a series of coincidences. One of the things they told us is, as soon as you decided to come here, the medicine started working. And that was very true, and I thought very interesting, because as soon as I decided, right, little synchronicities started lining up. Another thing they said is, like, the more you do this, the less you need. That was very true for me. Like, even now I can just kind of think of Mama Aya, and I smell her, and I can feel her rising up in me, and I can talk to her, and I can have the conversations that I was having while I was actually in the trip. So, and there are some people who went back a lot, often. There was one guy there who had, like, moved there, and he'd, done hundreds of trips. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the way. That's definitely not for me. Definitely not for me. So, I want to talk about other plant medicine that has been helpful for me. I now microdose mushrooms, not every day, not all the time, not all year round. But I microdose psilocybin mushrooms in order to treat my chronic depression, which is a symptom of ADHD and PTSD. And it's the sort of thing that really makes it hard to get through the day. I wake up with low dopamine mornings, and takes me hours just to, like, just prepare myself for the onslaught of this world. Ugh. And mushrooms help me with that. They help me just snap me out of it. No side effects whatsoever. They don't help me necessarily with the productivity in the same way that my ADHD meds that I get from a doctor do. So there's a combination there that works for me. And people ask, do I recommend this for you? And I'm like, no, I can't recommend this for anybody. You have to decide. You decide. If the plants are calling to you, heed the call. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not my role here. I'm telling you my experience. You can make your own decisions. If you would like a source for where to do ceremony, would I recommend Rhythmia? It's not without its problems. Certainly there's a colonizing effect to it, right? This is happening in Costa Rica. It's not the source of Mama Aya. I would like to think that they are, paying their people reasonably, but this is owned by a venture capitalist. So I don't know. I don't know what the finances are. When it comes to plant medicine, if you would like a source, I have 2 sources that I really like, and you can leave a comment and I will direct you to where I get my psilocybin microdoses. If you feel called to it, you can experiment with it. I 100% recommend using a facilitator. I myself had a facilitator for like a 6 to 8 week program. I think it was 6 weeks when she was doing it, but now it's 8 weeks, where we would, have weekly check-ins and talk about, like, this is one way to integrate this into your life in a way that can be very healing. So that was my experience with plant medicine and my current experience with plant medicine. And it's something that has been a blessing in a way that, like, SSRIs, the side effects were horrendous. Horrendous. No side effects for me from microdosing psilocybin mushrooms. Just lets me get out of the hell of chronic depression so I can be like, oh, it's not so bad living in this world, even though terrible things are happening all the time. All the time. Okie dokie. So, once again, these comments are wildly uninteresting to me. My chicken died. Sorry. Sorry, your chicken died. Not going to reference racism. Turn off the news. Who's talking about listening to the news? I don't watch the news. What are you talking about? I'm pick up what's going on in the world. I'm sensitive. I feel the suffering of the world. I need to be aware of what my government is doing. All right? I vote. I give things that are happening in the media 5 minutes of my day. It's important to stay informed to a degree. But yeah, watching the news all day long, just being fed one version of the story that's serving, a very distinct purpose. That's not necessarily just like, here's some information, but it's like, here's some propaganda that I'm using to control you. That's, it's not something I'm interested in. That's not something I do to myself. But you do need to just kind of look at what other people are hearing to understand why they are thinking that things are the way they are. Because everyone's getting a different version of the story. You know what I mean? So the reality is, it's important to get your news from sources outside of the US, but of course the BBC is not without its biases. But it is interesting to see how people are reporting on what's happening in the US, just the way it's interesting to see what people are reporting on what's like happening outside of the US in the US. It's interesting to see the biases and the propaganda. It's not interesting to me in terms of information that I'm going to use to make decisions about my life. So it's, I think, important. There's an element of important to know like what's going on in the suffering of the world, because I'm a healer. I got to deal with that shit. And it's important to also be able to zero in on the magic of what is actually around you. You can't turn off your eyes. You can't just toxic positivity yourself through this shit. All right? You got to be a little bit aware of the suffering of the world in order to learn how to transmute it into gratitude, into enlightenment. And enlightenment just means you're grateful for the present moment without wanting to change the past, without trying to control the future, and definitely without trying to control each other. As the Tao says, when we all live in flow, there will be peace on earth. As long as we're trying to control other people, there will be no peace on earth. As long as you are trying to control yourself, there will be no peace within yourself. So you have to learn how to go with the flow. How do you do that? Plant medicine can help. Helps me. Okay, bye friends.